of the high school counselors, along with Ms. Granville, who is Carly Granville, who's also on site tonight. Our 8th grade guidance counselor is Eileen Frazier. We are so excited to work with all of you. Just quick show of hands, how many of you are 12th graders or caregiver of a 12th grader? So a lot of you. Great. Any 11th graders and caregivers? Anybody that's an underclassman? 10th grade? Any 9th grade? Awesome. So I'm so delighted to introduce our speaker tonight. Her name is Beth Sylvia, and she's just a wealth of information, and we are delighted to sponsor her today. It's through the EOC, Educational Opportunity Center, and MEFA, which is the Mass Education Finance Authority. Again, just two wonderful organizations that provide free services to families like yourselves trying to navigate the financial aid process. So we thank you. It's really a densely packed informational night. Ms. Granville and I are hard at work meeting with students on Monday. We plan to go into the senior advisories to present them with information to seniors on how to apply to colleges, get their grades sent, get their counselor and teacher recommendations, all that good stuff. Before kind of diving into the admissions, financial aid piece of things, some paperwork just for families to know about seniors. We have something called a transfer release form. We're going to show students how to fill that out, how to list the colleges they're applying to, so that they can get their grades and letters sent to colleges. That's a form that students can sign if they're 18, but they should definitely be going over that with you. If a student is not yet 18, they'd be asking the parent, caregiver, guardian signature to be on there. So questions on transfer release form, those are available in guidance for our students. And again, we have just a ton of colleges that are visited here. The all-paid college fair for seniors. If seniors have signed up for that, we're asking for permission forms back on Friday. So we've got a lot of events going on, and we're excited to partner with you and help you in any way we can to make this process more manageable. If you're just coming in, want to make sure that everybody grabbed a folder. There's an intake form if you didn't use the QR code to make sure that you're connected to the services of the EOC so that you can get not just tonight one and done, but continued supports. Does anybody have any questions for me before I turn it over to our speaker? And the other piece, again, in addition to the transfer release form, there's a little counselor questionnaire that seniors can fill out for counselors along with their resume. So just kind of wanted you to know what that process looks like for the getting the grades and the letters sent to students, colleges. And we just ask, as a courtesy, just 2 weeks advance notice so that we have enough time to process everything that we need to send out through guidance. And again, as always, we're just a step away, email, phone call, just let us know how we can help, again, throughout the year as we partner together. And I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you. So welcome everyone to MEFA and the Educational Opportunity Center's Financial Aid 101 night at Wareham High School. A couple of housekeeping things I want to start with, and a little bit of introduction about myself, my background, and a little bit of what you can expect for tonight's presentation, and also the services that we will provide long-term if you are so interested with the Educational Opportunity Center. So a little bit about EOC and tonight's services. So in your folder, we put in a little bit of information on who we are, who we've been over the long haul, and a little bit of background on myself as well. So in your folder, if you haven't already done so, there is an intake form, and we just ask you to complete that. We are a federal grant, and in like all federal grants, they want us to track our services, who we're providing services to, and such, and in order to to complete services and to continue servicing individuals in our community, it is something that we do need to do. So I ask you to complete either through the QR code or the paper intake in the name of your student who's being represented here tonight, our intake form. Additionally, you'll find our program flyer, which will designate the different services that we are most accustomed to providing in the community. That being said, it's just a highlight of our most frequent services. We do an array of college access services, both in person and remotely and over the phone. So by filling out our intake form, what that is affording you the opportunity is to ask us any question, take advantages of one-on-one services, either remotely or in person, getting your financial aid forms completed, asking a question, helping with any kind of loan information you may want, maybe student loan forgiveness, you're questioning how that works, anything and anything in regards to college access, admissions questions, and what have you, you can take advantage of our services that way. We also have some cheat sheets in here for you to kind of save and remember your usernames and passwords, because it is a big piece of this financial aid puzzle that you will be endeavoring upon in the next year. And there's a little letter here explaining the background of the Educational Opportunity Center, its partnership with MIFA and my parent agency, Seven Hills, who sponsors us locally as the Educational Opportunity Center. We are located in the north end of New Bedford. It took me about 15 minutes to get here to Wareham today, so it's actually a pretty easy drive for folks in Wareham. It isn't too far away, and we have been actually providing services in the area since the early 70s. So we've had a long relationship in the greater New Bedford area. I myself have been the EOC director since the early 2000s. So I've been doing this for quite a while myself. I have 4 children, 3 of whom are college graduates. One is still enrolled in college as well. He is getting his master's degree. And I've been doing this a long time. I have a son who's in 8th grade. So I will be going through this again in short order. I can tell you from experience, it does go by fast. Before you know it, they're freshmen, and then before you know it, they're seniors. And it all does go by in a flash. So I can appreciate where you guys are all at in this process. I've been there, and I will be there again. I have helped thousands of kids at this stage in my life now, my own included, navigate this process, and I've seen just about everything. And I'm happy to be here tonight to share my knowledge and help you all navigate this process as well. So without further ado, let's start to get into the nuts and bolts of the financial aid process. So what we're going to cover tonight are the types and sources of financial aid, the application process itself, how financial aid decisions are made, paying for college, and free resources that you can take advantage of. Next. MIFA, this financial aid seminar is available on their web pages, as well as these different social media links. They're on Facebook, they are on LinkedIn, you can find them on YouTube, and you can find them on their MIFA original podcasts as well. You will find not my particular MIFA seminar, but you will find other MIFA seminars on their websites as well. And this is also being taped, so you'll be able to find this on your local cable access. Next. So college financing, the types and sources of financial aid. So there are 3 main types of financial aid: grants and scholarships, work study, and student loans. When we typically think of financial aid, though, we're thinking of grants and scholarships, the free money, the gift aid. And when we are receiving financial aid notifications, or award letters as they are called, we want to see gift aid, the free money. That is the money that we never have to repay. And so when those award letters are being offered to our sons and daughters, and they're being generated from the schools, that is the money we're hoping to receive. But in reality, that is not all the money that is offered. Schools do offer free money, but they also offer federal work study as well as student loans. So where does financial aid come from? It comes from 4 main sources. It comes from the federal government, it comes from state governments, it comes from the institutions themselves, and it comes from outside sources. Typically when outside sources get involved, you think of the outside scholarships. Think of community organizations that provide scholarships. That's a lot of the other resources that provide financial assistance for college. So what are the main types of loans? And what should be the first look loans are federal Stafford loans, the direct loan program from the federal government. These loans are offered to students directly. There is no credit check. It is offered in the student name. There is no collateral needed. Parents are not needed to co-sign it. It is a loan offered to the student because the student is interested in attending higher ed. The loan is only in the student's name. Freshman loan limits for dependent students, which most students tend to be as freshmen, is $5,500. Sophomore year loan limits typically are $6,500. Junior and senior year, those loan limits for most students rise to $7,500. This past school year, the interest rates are 4.99. The interest rates are tied to the interest rates that are posted by the national standards, okay? So they will rise as the prime rate rises. It is set once a year. It doesn't rise monthly, or it doesn't rise, bi-weekly as prime rates rise and lower, okay? It is set for the year. It changes every July 1st. So we won't know what next year's prime rate is and what next year's rate is for student loans until it is set on July 1st, okay? Typically, the repayment period will look something like $300 a month for a student who maximizes their Stafford loans over the course of the 4 years of undergraduate study. So if a student takes out the $5,500, the $6,500, and the $7,500 over the course of the 4 years of undergraduate study, they would owe $27,500. That would come out to about a $300 a month repayment monthly. They would be looking to repay, depending on interest, about $32,000 to $34,000 overall. And it would come out to about $300 a month in standard repayment. Now, the thing with the Stafford loans is that there are multiple types of repayment options. Most other types of loan programs that are bank-owned loans, that are what we call alternative loans, don't offer multiple types of repayment programs. They may offer multiple types of terms, 10 years, 15 years, even 20-year repayment terms, but they don't offer multiple types of repayment programs. With the Stafford loan programs, there are other types of repayment programs. They have income-based repayment. So instead of giving you a set monthly payment based on the term and the amount of the loan, they're going to base it on the income level of the student. So when a student first gets out of school, their income may not be that high, but their payment is going to be based on their earnings, not based on their income. And then there are forgiveness programs. There's public student loan forgiveness. Typically, forgiveness programs for teachers, firefighters, EMTs, cops, okay, which is after 10 years of payments in an income-based repayment program, the tail end of their loans are forgiven. So those types of options don't exist with non-federal loans. Additionally, with federal loans, as is stated here on the slide, deferment, forbearance options exist. A deferment is when you are in school, you don't have to make payments on those loans if you do not want to. So it allows you to not make payments when you are enrolled in school at least half the time. So if you obtained your undergraduate degree and want to go on and get a master's degree, you don't have to make those payments. You can pay for your graduate credits instead of making payments on those loans. Now, you may be paying interest on those loans, but you won't have to make payments. You could pay down your interest. There's no prepayment penalties, but you won't be responsible for a loan payment in any given month if you don't have the money to make those payments. A forbearance is the ability to tell your loan servicer that I'm having an economic hardship right now and I can't make the payments. And they'll give you the option to stop payments for a given period of time, maybe 6 months. Now, there aren't other loans out there. Your car loan, your bank is never going to tell you, okay, you don't have to make loan payments for 6 months. Okay, that doesn't exist with other types of loans, but it does exist with the Stafford loan program. And then, of course, I had mentioned the forgiveness opportunities. Any questions so far? Okay, next. So we talked a little bit about the types of financial aid available. When we talk about financial aid, we want to also build a list of schools that think about incorporating the thought process of what is also safe, reach, and likely in terms of financially safe, likely, and reach schools for financial purposes. We talk about that all the time when it comes to academics and admissions purposes. We also need to think in that vein when it comes to financial need. The cost of school is getting more and more expensive. And oftentimes, the price tags are outweighing what families feel comfortable with. Now, for some families, the most expensive school can be the most affordable. For other families, that isn't the case. So when families are putting together their list for academically reaching, likely, and safe options academically, I encourage families to do the same thing when it comes to the financial end of this paradigm. And by all means, for some families, it can shift dramatically. And oftentimes, that academic reach school can end up being that financially safe school. And I'll give you an example of that. If a low-income family looks at the price tag of Harvard, you'd be blown away by that almost $85,000 price tag of Harvard. But if you can get into Harvard and you're a low-income family, free reduced lunch family, you're going to go to Harvard for free. So Harvard becomes a financially safe school, even though it is a reach school academically. Does that make sense to folks? Okay, next slide. Merit-based aid. So we were just talking about this whole reach, target, and likely business. So when you are looking at these profiles of these schools and where you fit in, if it is a likely school is a school where you could get even more of what's called merit aid. Merit aid is academic aid primarily. It can also be athletic aid or aid for a particular talent as well, an artistic talent. It could be because a school needs an oboe player and you're a fantastic oboe player, okay? But it is for merit, a skill that is beyond the skills of their typical students. So you excel, you are better than most at that given school. And so they're going to award you for that talent, that skill, typically academically focused. And so when you're beyond their typical student, they're going to give you money for that. It's mostly renewable, based usually on your GPA or your achievement on the sports field maybe. But if you can't keep up that achievement, that scholarship will very likely disappear, okay? So usually with an academic merit scholarship, you have to maintain a 3.0 GPA or maybe even higher if it's a higher academic scholarship, okay? My daughters, I had two daughters who went to Stonehill, and they both had merit scholarships through Stonehill. And one had to maintain a 3.3 for her merit scholarship. And if she lost, if she dropped below that 3.3, at Stonehill she would lose everything, but she would lose a percentage of the scholarship depending how far below that 3.3 she dropped. Other schools, they'll drop more. Sports scholarships, they typically will just take the whole thing away. I had a daughter whose boyfriend got a football scholarship, and then he did to his knee what Gronk did to his knee, that bone contusion business, and he stopped playing. He had had too many other injuries. He was a lineman. And he had to leave Assumption because he lost a $28,000 athletic scholarship. Okay, so with merit aid, it is attached to performance. Next slide. As is done with admissions process, always include at least one likely financially safe school on your college list. Okay, so for some students, that could be BCC or Cape Cod Community College. It could be Bridgewater or UMass Dartmouth. For others, it could be UMass Amherst. Okay, although that's less and less likely today with the price tag of where UMass Amherst lies in. Okay, but every family has a different notion of what that financially safe school is. But I caution you, don't hyper-focus on the price tags of schools, Because remember what I said about Harvard? There are many schools that the price tag is not what most families pay. My daughters both went to Stonehill for less than what UMass Amherst would have cost us. My son went to Springfield for less than what UMass Amherst would have cost us. So there are many, many families who experience that the cost of a private school can be less than the cost of the in-state public. And I have seen many families get in-state public tuition at an out-of-state public for less than the in-state public flagship. URI and UNH have packaged better in recent years than UMass Amherst for many kids. So don't hyper-focus on the price tags, because the financial aid packages, the merit aid that comes through, can really alter that bottom line. So think about what that bottom line is for you. Have that conversation with your kids, but put your eggs in multiple baskets. Don't say, no, you can't apply here because it's too expensive. Because until you see what money they are going to provide you with, you don't know that it's too expensive. Does that make sense to folks? Okay. And apply to a range of schools. You don't know until you try. And don't go by what your next door neighbor's experience was or what your cousin's experience was, because every family situation is different. And your situation is unique to yours. And your situation does not mirror someone else's. And no two families' situation is ever the same, both between the academics, the income, the assets, everything plays out differently, and so the end result is different. Even the high schools that the students come from make a difference. Next. The essay. Pick a theme, show, don't tell. I joke all the time. My son, when he did his essay, he had a major athletic injury. He had a sports injury, and he decided to write about it. He wrote it like a clinical note. He literally wrote it like a clinical note, and his sisters both looked at it. One of his sisters is an English teacher, and she was blown away by it. And you know, and they both tore it apart, and he was so insulted. And it's like, you need to, this is the one place where you really get to talk about who you are outside of everything that's very black and white. You know, everything that's very numbers based. And you know, you've got this grade, you got this score, you know, this is the chance to really put flavor to who you are and to really describe yourself and to really, you know, look outside of the boxes and to really show them who you are and use descriptive language and, you know, don't make it a clinical note and don't make it about somebody else. Tell your story. And this is the chance to do it. And if you go on the Common App, there's a link for essay tips. My number one tip, don't make grammatical errors. Don't make spelling mistakes. You can literally write about anything, just don't write it poorly. You know, one of the prompts is write about anything you want. I told you my son wrote a clinical note that his sisters helped him fix. My oldest daughter wrote about flying a kite. She's the English major in college and the English teacher today. But she wrote about flying a kite and letting go and trying to reach up higher and she used it as a creating writing exercise, and it was very good, but she liked to write. My second child, she wrote about having a best friend with autism growing up until she was about, I think it was 11 years old when we were snowbound in New Hampshire on a ski trip and we couldn't make it home for a play date. And the little girl decided she no longer could be her friend because of us not being there and how that affected her. And today she's a special ed teacher. And so she talked about that experience in her essay and how it impacted her. So again, you know, adding those experiences and really having it go outside of who you are in your application is really important, and that's the opportunity to do that. Any questions so far? Okay, next. So senior year, ask 2 teachers for a letter of recommendation. Get your essay completed, hopefully by mid-October, if possible. Get your list of schools, reach, target, and likely, both in the admissions and financial aid vein. Some of them might intersect, but you want to have both of those looked at. There might be 2 separate lists and somehow combine them. Get your Common App completed and continue to research the colleges, both with live and virtual visits. And one thing COVID has helped the colleges really do even a better job with are these virtual tours. They've really done a good job of getting you more information by going online and, you know, kind of touring their campuses before you even get on those campuses. But there's nothing better than getting on a college campus and getting a feel for what that school is really like. And so as much as you can get yourself onto a college campus, I highly recommend it. The other pieces is colleges pay attention to that. They do. And so as many contacts as you can have at the college, whether it's, you know, you reach out to an admissions representative, you go on a college tour, you ask a question, you click on this or that or the other thing, they watch all of that and they pay attention to that, okay? So, we talked about need-based aid and all of that kind of admission stuff around merit-based aid. Okay, and so the academics is going to really drive the car when it comes to merit-based aid. But the vast majority of financial aid is not merit-based, and there are schools that never give out merit-based aid. Okay, schools like Harvard, BU even, BC, they give out no merit-based aid because how would they ever determine who had merit-based aid at Harvard? How would they ever make that decision? They couldn't. Even schools like BC, BU, and Northeastern give out very, very little because it's really hard to determine who would get some of that, right? The schools that give out the most merit-based aid are what we call mid-tier privates, right? Those middle schools, schools like Stonehill, Roger Williams, Salve Regina, St. Anselm up in New Hampshire, right? Even schools like UMass Dartmouth and Bridgewater now give out a good amount of merit aid trying to attract students away from, you know where, UMass Amherst, right? They're trying to take kids away from the flagship. That's why URI and UNH are giving better packages, because they're trying to attract the Massachusetts kids to their schools, okay? And that's what merit aid is all about. They're trying to attract students to their schools, because make no mistake, colleges are businesses. And so they are looking to what they can do to attract students to their institutions. So the other way that they can attract students to their institutions is by providing them with the amount of need-based aid students need as well. And so need-based aid is what it sounds like, okay? It is financial aid that is based on a family's ability to pay, okay? So this is the aid that families need to fund a year of school. And families complete financial aid applications to help determine what that need is. It's a standardized formula. What we feel we need is not what the schools and or the federal government feel we need, okay? It is a standardized formula. It does not take into account all aspects of a family's resources. They use a very standard set of living allowances, okay? So all families have the same standard of living allowance. They are not taking into account, especially into the federal formula, certain types of living allowances. They're not taking into account your mortgage or your rent. They're not taking into account your debt. They're not taking into account your car insurance or your car payments, okay? None of that is filtered into the formula. To maintain need-based aid, you need to maintain what's called satisfactory academic progress, meaning you have to maintain a certain amount of credits every semester. Now, you don't have to maintain a certain GPA. You just have to maintain satisfactory academic progress, meaning you have to pass a certain number of classes over a certain period of time. Are there any questions so far about need-based aid? Okay, can we go to the next slide? At this point, we are going to take a short break. We have a little drawing for some door prizes.
We have one really nice mystery door prize.
Okay.
Take if you need to stand and stretch just a little, that little brain break. I want to make sure that
I'm so good at that.
Want to make sure that everybody who came today has a pink raffle ticket. If you would like to be part of the door prize raffle, raise your hand, we'll make sure you have a ticket. Any other ticket takers?
One more. Same size, I'll bring both.
Don't let anybody miss out. Last call for door prize.
Here you go. Thank you. I'm her new guidance counselor.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Yes,
They are, like, so it's that whole loan forgiveness piece.
Yeah?
Yes.
That's
But
it.
you have to be a certain
I
repayment.
guess I get the other one.
Because what
Oh, here you go.
happens is if you're not doing repayment, it gets paid off.
Ms. Randall, do you want to do the honors? Sure.
So basically, you usually like an income-based repayment. And then it does. After, it depends what repayment plan you're in, but they do get forgiven. And what's supposed to happen on the right one is that this will be submitted. Here's the card. That, okay, everybody else will get the same.
Remember to everyone have their tickets. Taking this at random, okay?
We have one more ticket, sorry.
Oh,
Great.
And
One more ticket.
the application will come out.
I was just about to say. If I draw, I can't put anyone. To be fair, same here. I've never won a round. I've never won any prize, like. Have I? Yeah. That was the
As long as it's accurate, and as long as it's not valid, because know where to go. We're going to, I know a lot, we don't know everything yet because it hasn't been released, but we will help you with that.
Alright. I'm gonna say the numbers, okay? 607135. Yay! Congrats, Shane.
So at the end of the night, there's a make sure you get it.
Yay! So make sure you see this right. You good? Alright. Sorry. Good night that you're loved, that's it. Alright, really? Really? Who got the first ticket?
All right. So congratulations. Are we ready to get into the meat of this now?
Yes.
Feeling a little overwhelmed with all this information? Okay. So remember, we're here to help you as well. And so we at the Educational Opportunity Center, so like I had mentioned, I'm the director, but I employ one full-time staff person, but at our busy times of year, which is now because of all of the high school students who come through our doors all at once, I do hire about 4 or 5 consultants who work in financial aid offices at area colleges, both private, state, and the local community colleges, who help me process a lot of financial aid applications. And so they also bring a wealth of knowledge as well from their institutions. And so it is really helpful. So we offer appointments, like I said, in person and virtually, Saturdays, evenings, as well as during the day. And so we can really accommodate a lot of different schedules in a very short period of time, so that we can pretty much meet everyone's need. Because there are a lot of people who will have November 1st, November 15th, and December 1st deadlines, as well as deadlines that go well into March and May 1st. So that's kind of why we utilize the models that we do, so that we can meet everyone's unique needs when it comes to the process of financial aid applications. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So, as I just mentioned, some deadlines. The main thing about financial aid applications are deadlines. So, if you remember nothing else from tonight's presentation, I want to impress upon you one thing: deadlines. Critical. So you hear a lot in the media currently about getting your financial aid application done in the first 2 weeks of October. I can't tell you how many financial aid applications I've done since October 1st. That's not necessary, okay? You don't get more money by doing your financial aid application on October 4th than doing it on the day before the application is due. What is important, though, is making sure you get your financial aid application processed prior to the date that it's due. And what I mean by that is if you have a November 1st deadline for FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid, which usually takes 2 to 3 days to process, that means that if your deadline for FAFSA is November 1st, and there are 31 days in October, you should probably get that application done by the 28th or 29th at the absolute absolute latest to be safe. Okay? It doesn't need to be done on October 4th. You're not going to get more money if it is done on October 4th. But schools have deadlines, and every deadline is different at different schools. And it is also different based on the type of admissions application you are doing. For instance, if you are applying early action to Providence College, you will have a financial aid and admissions deadline of November 1st. Okay? At another school, you might have an admissions deadline of November 1st for early action, but a financial aid deadline of November 15th. At another school, it might be November 1st and December 1st for financial aid and admissions November 1st, okay? They post it on their financial aid and admissions websites. They don't make it simple, okay? But you have to meet the earliest deadline when you do one of these financial aid applications. So if you have even one school that's November 1st, then you might as well send it to all the schools you're applying to, as long as you know them, because you're doing the application anyway. Because you do one application and you send it to multiple schools. In one sitting, you can send it to 10 schools. It processes in 2 to 3 days, and then you can send it to another 10 schools if you so choose. It is the free application for federal student aid. So there is no cost to send your financial aid application. Okay? So the MEFA College Application Manager is available to you, but I also provided you one in your packets. Very useful. I recommend to also take a picture of it once you fill it out. Have it in your photos. Use your notes in your phones as well to save your usernames and passwords. I recommend when you create usernames and passwords to link them to your email addresses, okay? And use the same password for your parent and student. Keep it as simple as possible. Less room for forgetting, okay? Next slide. So, the workhorse of federal student aid is the FAFSA. It is the free application for federal student aid. Again, it's free. You don't have to pay for it. There is a second application from our friends at the College Board that does have a fee attached to it, and we'll get to that one in a moment. So FAFSA will tell you that they have state deadlines. State deadlines for Massachusetts are May 1st. If you wait to May 1st to complete your FAFSA, you have missed the boat for most schools, okay? I focused on our very early deadlines a moment ago. If you aren't applying early action, and if you aren't applying to some of those schools I just mentioned earlier, and you're applying to state schools like UMass Boston and UMass Amherst and UMass Dartmouth and Bridgewater, your financial aid deadline will be March 1st. If you're applying to a community college, it's usually May 1st or possibly April 1st for their priority deadline, okay? So their financial aid deadlines are much later. Again, every school will list their deadline on their financial aid webpage. Pay attention to the deadline at that particular school. Every FAFSA application needs an FSA ID and password. One parent
needs the FSA ID and password. Not both if it's a married couple. If parents are divorced, on the FAFSA, just one parent's information is included. Typically, it is the parent who provides 51% of the student's support or the custodial parent. Any questions about that? Yes?
Say you're divorced and there are two parents and one parent makes significantly more than the other. Are you able to list the parent that makes less? Or
If that parent provides 51% of the child's support, yes.
and how is that determined?
By which parent is supporting the child most.
So it could be
It should be very objective, yes. It's like which parent is providing. There are many times that the higher income earning parent is not providing the most support. They live with the lower wage earning parent. They can provide child support, but that other parent is still paying for the housing, paying for the food. It doesn't need to be the highest wage earning parent. Okay?
Does it have, to do with, like, who claims?
No,
Okay.
it doesn't. Next year, that might be switching. Okay, so there is, in July of '23, the Higher Ed Act is being partially what we call reauthorized. There are certain changes that are going to be beneficial. There are some changes. One of the things that is going to change, we're not going to have what we call an expected family contribution anymore, which some of you might be aware of that term. It's going to be called a student aid index. There are some other changes in the works. One of the things is that is being talked about is that the parent who has the higher income is going to be the parent included on FAFSA. None of it has been completely set in stone yet, but that could be happening. Right now, when there are 2 students in college, we're able to include 2 students in college as part of the FAFSA application. That's another change that's possibly on the horizon for next year, that won't be included on the application anymore, which will impact the financial aid. Some schools are saying they're still going to consider it. So if that happens, that will be good news at those schools. But as it stands right now, the FAFSA may no longer be looking at that. Okay? So a really nice tool is the data retrieval tool. It pulls in your income taxes directly from the IRS into the FAFSA. It cuts down on correspondence that is extra from the parents to the school, extra forms, extra tax documents. It does streamline that process considerably if you're able to. 30% of parents, somewhere in that range, typically can't for a host of reasons. Some are identity theft. If you have an IRS PIN to file your taxes, that's one way that you can't upload. If you have that PIN, I have it. From identity theft, I can't upload my taxes into the FAFSA. If you file, certain types of filing statuses can't as well. If you file separately, you can't. If you're recently married and filed separately, prior year, you can't. There are different reasons why you can't. So then you have to manually put in your tax information, and then oftentimes the school will request copies of your taxes. All right? The FAFSA, you do have to complete it every year if you want to be considered for any forms of financial aid, as well as the Abigail Adams Scholarship. It is a requirement for that, the MCAS scholarship. So if your student has been awarded that, which is a tuition-only scholarship for state schools in Massachusetts, at a community college, it's worth about $800, about $1,800 at UMass Amherst, and the other colleges in the system, it's somewhere in the middle. You do have to complete the FAFSA for that. Certain scholarships, local scholarships, want to see what's called a student aid report, and you have to complete FAFSA to get that to them as well. And some merit aid scholarships from the colleges themselves want to see a FAFSA completed. So there are multiple reasons to complete FAFSA as well as student loans. Okay. Any questions thus far? Okay, next. So what's included on the FAFSA? Parents who are not citizens can complete a FAFSA as long as the student is a citizen or is in possession of a non-resident card. So the parent does not have to have a non-resident card or be a citizen, but can complete the FAFSA for their child as long as the child has status, okay? You need a signature page though, and not an FSA ID if that is the reality for that family, okay? And that is something we can help with. It is a little bit more confusing, so by all means, if that's your situation, please let me know, reach out to us at our office, and we can certainly help with that. Parents, all parents are considered in this application. So if the biological parents live together, both parents are considered on FAFSA application. That changed a few years ago, okay? So even if you're unmarried, parents living together, both parents are considered on the FAFSA. If unmarried parents live separately, only the custodial parent's information is listed on the FAFSA. Okay? It doesn't matter if both parents are same-sex parents, same thing. If they live together, both parents are considered on the FAFSA. If parents are divorced, as I had mentioned before, it's either the custodial parent or the parent who provides the 51% of the child's support is the parent who is listed on the FAFSA. Okay? If a parent is divorced and remarried, and that is the parent who provides 51% of the student support, then it is the parent and the spouse. The spouse is now considered the father in the scenario for FAFSA purposes. So they are now considered a married couple. They're considered married parents. Is that clear? Okay. And then we put in the number in the household and the number in college for this year. Legal guardians are never considered parents. So if a student is in a legal guardianship, they are considered an independent student. And just their income is used to complete FAFSA. The same thing for a student who has McKinney-Vento designation, a student who is in foster care or had been in foster care anytime after 13, even if they're not in foster care currently. They are considered independent students. If there are any questions around that, I can talk to folks at the end of tonight. Independent status, what that gives, different from being a dependent student, is that only the student's information is used to determine financial aid. Those are very unique and special circumstances. It's very hard to get, and financial aid officers have to approve it. And it's very individualized circumstances, and you have to have very specific proof in order to have that granted. Okay, any questions? Yes?
How old would a student be, or what age does it go on their income as opposed to?
24.
20.
Yeah.
So with a student who's non-US citizen, would they be considered an independent student because they
International student.
international student?
So if a student is a non-US student without status,
No, I mean, if their parents are non-US citizens.
as long as they have status, they would be, they are still considered a dependent student.
Okay. But if you can't put like any information.
You put information in, you just can't put social security information in.
Okay.
Okay, so you have to put everything in manually, and you put in zeros for the social security number, but you do put income information in. Okay? All right, next. All right, so we use the 2021 income information for next year's academic year for both student and parent, both taxable and untaxed income. Okay? The FAFSA is much more of an income-based application than asset-based, but assets are also included. We do not look at retirement assets, but we do look at other types of assets, including 529 plans, savings accounts, checking account, property that is not the home you live in, stocks, bonds, mutual funds that are non-retirement. Okay? The income and assets of a student are attached at a much higher rate than a parent's. So when it comes to recording a student's income and assets, if it's recorded in both names, we always will put it under a parent's name as opposed to the student's. Okay? So if it's in both names and an account, when we report it on FAFSA, we report it under the parent and not the student. That makes sense to folks?
So say you have an established trust where the parent's name is on it and the child's name is on it, and there was money in there, what category would this fall in?
It would be an asset. Other questions? Okay. Small businesses are not included unless they employ over 100 people, which it wouldn't be a small business anymore. So small businesses are excluded for asset. The income from a small business is included though. Okay? And that would be on your tax return. The CSS profile. I call this the FAFSA on steroids. Okay. So all that information I just went over on FAFSA, multiply it. And that's the CSS profile. So the CSS profile is from our friends at the College Board. So it is no longer the free application for aid. It is the cost application for aid. So it's $25 for the first application. It is $15 for subsequent applications. But they are a kinder and gentler College Board, and so now they are waiving fees for families who earn under $100,000. Okay. So if your family falls into that bracket and other criteria, like you don't have a lot in assets, they will waive the application fee. Okay. So schools that use the CSS profile, primarily it is schools with big endowments. Okay. So the Ivy League schools, Georgetown, Notre Dame, BC, BU, Northeastern. Bentley's still using it, Brandeis uses it, Amherst College uses it, WHC is probably one of the few, and Sacred Heart are probably two of the few, what I call a mid-tier private, that's still using it. Stonehill and Wheaton dropped it this year. Salve had already dropped it, you know, Roger Williams dropped it a few years ago, St. Anselm had dropped it a few years back. You know, more and more of the mid-tier privates had been dropping it over the course of the last several years. But there are a few still using it. I pretty much know most of them at the top of my head. A few I get a little shaky with. There is a list, if you go to collegeboard.org and you go under CSS profile, they give you the list of those schools. As well as every college's financial aid page will tell you whether they use the CSS profile. If they don't say it on there, they don't use it, okay? When they tell you what you need to fill out for financial aid, if they use the CSS profile, they will tell you that and what their deadline is for submission of that form, okay? So again, it is the FAFSA on steroids, and they just do a deeper dive. So they will ask for the values that you have in retirement, as well as all the other assets that I went over in the FAFSA. They will ask for small business information. They will ask for the value of your small business. They will ask for the value of your home. They will ask for the mortgage payment. They will ask for the balance of your mortgage. They will ask, some of the schools ask for the make and models of your cars. Some of the schools will ask for your parish. I mean, they ask for all kinds of things, okay? It depends on the school, and they query what questions they want. So the more CSS profile schools you apply to, the longer the application is. Some of them go into a lot of questions. The CSS profile has supplemental questions as well as their standard questions. So it can be, I do these a lot, and sometimes it can take me 2 hours to get through a CSS profile. It's long. All right. The one last thing with the CSS profile that I didn't mention is that, unlike the FAFSA that just asks for the custodial or one parent's information in a divorce situation, the CSS profile will ask for the non-custodial parent information as well. So, potentially in the case of divorced parents, you could be answering questions on 4 parents, 2 sets of remarried parents. So they want all information on all members of the households. Okay? All right. So after you apply, the colleges receive the information electronically, and that's how they make their decisions. Okay? Now, until an admissions application is received, these financial aid applications actually stay in cyberspace. They don't do anything with them. So you need to actually do your admissions application for these applications to go anywhere. Okay? Colleges may request verification, and if anything changes in the course of the year, you can request the financial aid office to review for special circumstances. Things happen. Jobs are lost, God forbid, illness, death, that sort of thing. They can make adjustments based on the current circumstances of a family, not the past income. Because remember, you're basing this financial aid application on 2021. If 2023 ends up being totally different, they can make those adjustments, okay? Additionally, colleges, and not all do this, but some colleges will accept an appeal. And how an appeal can work is that you may even have one school that your child might not be as interested in, that gives a better financial aid award letter package than the college they're really interested in. And the worst thing a college can say is no, but there are colleges that will entertain that appeal and maybe give you a couple of $1,000s more because another very similar school gave more money. And it's definitely worth the ask, because the worst thing they're going to tell you is no. Okay? So there are ways to work with the financial aid office. They're your partners in this. They're not out to get you, okay? They want to provide you with as much money as they can. They're not bad people, okay? They're there to help. Next. So these are some of the documents that are used for verification, okay? The tax return, there are worksheets, asset account statements. They may ask for some of these documents to make sure that they're providing you with the right financial aid. If they ask for additional information and they don't receive it from you, they will not package your financial aid. So make sure that you check with your kids and that they're telling you that they need additional documentation if they do. Okay? It is not unlikely for this to happen, especially at some of the private schools. Okay? Next. Talk to your financial aid office. They're there to communicate with you. Especially if any of your kids are applying to the four-year privates, they ask for more information. You know, if it's UMass Amherst and all you're getting is a Stafford loan, they're probably not going to ask for much. But if you're getting institutional money, there's a good chance that they're going to ask for additional information, okay? The more money you're getting, the more likely it is that they're going to ask for additional documents. So just make sure that if your kids aren't communicating that, you're logging in, you're asking to log into their portal, sit down next to them, make sure you're looking at their emails and you're communicating with them and making sure that they're responding to the things they need to respond to. Okay? Next. So we talked a little bit about the changes. These are some of the things that are going to be possibly changing for the next academic year. So the form's supposed to get shorter. The EFC is going to disappear and it's going to become a student aid index. Divorce separated parent, the parent who provides more financial support will be listed on the FAFSA, definitely. There's been some talk about the higher income parent, but there's been a lot of pushback with that. Number of students in college will not be considered in the student aid index calculation. Some forms of untaxed income will no longer be reported, like child support. Resources like 529 from grandparents and other family members no longer need to be reported. Look for information from colleges on how changes will affect your future financial aid offers. Sign up for me for emails to stay in the loop. And next. So how are financial aid decisions made? So cost of attendance is the cost of going to school for a year. Typically, we think tuition fees, room and board. But we also will include books and supplies, transportation, and personal expenses. And when we put all of that together, we come up with the cost of attendance. So next slide. So the cost of attendance is used to help us calculate how much aid a family is going to get, along with this notion of expected family contribution. And so the expected family contribution is the secondary term that goes along with cost of attendance. And the expected family contribution is the amount of money that a family can absorb according to the federal government for a year of school. Okay. It is not necessarily the amount of money you can absorb off your income for the given year, but it's the amount of money the federal government thinks you can absorb based on your past, future, and present earnings. You can go to EFC calculator at MEFA.org to get a sense of what that number could be. If you have more than one in college, this will be the last year that you will get the benefit of having more than one in college. It typically breaks that down another 40% or so. Is kind of the benefit of having two in college at the same time. Doesn't cut it in half, but it does give you like a 35–40% break when you have two in college at the same time. Next. So when you take the cost of attendance, you subtract the expected family contribution, that determines how much financial aid you're eligible for. So your EFC never changes. What does change is the amount of money that you are eligible for. So the cost of attendance can vary dramatically, and your financial eligibility can then vary dramatically. Your EFC will never change. So the next slide. In this scenario, the family's EFC is $5,000. You can plug that one in for me. Just hit the next slide. And the next slide. This school gave $27,500 in grants and scholarships. And then they provided another $5,500 in a Stafford loan, which almost every school will provide. And then they provided some work study of $2,000. And lastly, there was unmet need of $5,000. So with a cost of attendance of $45,000, this family is looking to pay out of pocket for this year of school $12,000, but had an EFC, an expected family contribution, of $5,000. And this is not atypical. This is actually a pretty typical type of scenario with that level of expected family contribution. Now, mind you, there's also that $5,500 student loan that will need to be paid back. Now, work study does not come off the bill. Now, it is considered financial aid, but it is money the student will earn weekly unless they're like my kid and didn't show up at their work study job. Because it was Friday morning, didn't work well for him. Okay, but it doesn't come off the bill. Any questions about how the financial aid awarding works? Because remember we said in the previous slide, the family has the primary responsibility to pay. So what went in first? The EFC. Okay, the next slide. So another way to do some, especially for the few juniors who are here tonight, to look at this net price calculators, and some of them will even look at merit aid. You can put in your GPA and SAT scores if you've taken them yet, and they will calculate merit. And so you can, put in your GPAs and they'll calculate potential merit aid and look at what you might pay based on your parents' income as well as your GPA and what you might pay at a given school. And these can be helpful. Next. So these are examples of what we call award letters, okay? And these are 3 different schools with cost of attendance, just like the other one, of $45,000. You might ask, why $45,000? It's because according to one of the MIFA representatives, it's the average price of college in the United States. It doesn't represent any college in Massachusetts, but it is the average cost in this country. So we're using it, all right? But college A in this scenario has no unmet need, okay? This college met this student's need in full. So if I were the parent of this child, this is where this kid's going, okay? I don't care. That's where they're going. I've already put 3 through school. My 4th child, when they go, that's it. That's where they're going. They're definitely not going to college C, okay? That's too much unmet need. But this is average, honestly, okay? And these are the discussions to have. Like, what can you live with as a parent? If that's the amount of unmet need. Our EFCs often are bad enough. When you tack on that kind of unmet need, and I've sat with so many families where the kids think, well, that's okay, I'll pay it back. Not understanding that times 4 and what that means, for the next 20 years. Like, is that doable? And kind of doing the math of what that all means. MIFA has some really good calculators too, of, what that payment is over the course of 15 or 10 years and that sort of thing. And that can be really helpful. But, that's a lot of unmet need right there. Now, the next slide. So, who can tell me what's glaringly wrong with these award letters? 2 out of the 3 of them. Yeah, so that's not wrong. What's wrong with B and C? Financial aid award letter should never have a parent plus loan on it. Parent loans should never be included on a financial aid award letter. Number 1, there's no guarantee a parent's going to qualify for it because it's credit-based. Okay? They should not be packaging with that. Yes, they package with the Stafford loan. It is not credit-based. The student is automatically accepted for it. The parent loan programs, whether it's federal or private, is not guaranteed, and the interest rates are quite high because it is credit-based. So for some parents, they're very high. And they should never be putting it on a student's award letter, because many parents won't do it. And so if you're seeing that on a financial aid award letter, buyer beware. So the unmet need is very different in college B and C. It's $15,000 in college B, and it's $34,500 in college C. Next slide. So this is one option, just showing you that there are many options to pay for college. If you go to the next slide. So this is a balance due of $20,000, which is typical for a lot of families. And so this scenario, they use $1,000 of student savings and $4,000 of parent savings. And they created a payment plan of $500 a month and took out an educational loan for $10,000. And that paid the balance due of $20,000. You can do 1, 2, all of these things. It's totally up to the family how they want to pay the balance due. Okay, next slide. And then these are some things to think about. Would starting at a community college make sense to save money? Definitely have the conversation of, what is that price tag that you want to start with? What's that doable bottom line figure after those financial aid award letters come in that your family is comfortable with? After the Stafford loans on that award letter, after whatever grant money comes in, after whatever merit scholarships come through, what is that price? I had that conversation with my own kids, and I also prefaced it with, I wanted 20 scholarship applications completed as well. So if I was willing to fund college, I wanted them to do some hard work as well. And so each of my kids was, senior year, they were required to complete 20 scholarship applications. My kids went to New Bedford High, and they give out a lot of money. And there were 5 I required because I knew there were some internal ones at New Bedford High. Some were super easy to complete, and they gave out a lot of money just internally. And so I required those to be completed, and then certain community ones that were high return on investment, shall I say. And then the others they could choose based on their interests and their qualifications. But I required that if they wanted me to invest what I was going to invest. And I highly encourage parents to do that. Kids hate doing them. They hate it. Ask guidance. It's like pulling teeth. But essay ones, they hate doing the most. So if, there's less competition. And it's well worth doing it. All of my kids got at least $7,000 in outside scholarships. My son, who was probably my least competitive student, actually got one that gave him $2,500 over the course of 4 years, like each year for 4 years. And that was an internal one at New Bedford High School. So you never know what is going to be offered.
We get a lot. They'll be flooding. We've already got questions about them.
Yeah, it's
There's plenty of
worth
seniors out.
500 here, 1,000 there, it adds up. It's so worth doing.
And we're gonna have a workshop in spring for the second semester for seniors to make sure they know how to apply and not to miss out on any of those great opportunities.
Yeah, and those have deadlines. Deadlines, 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 and it's huge. And it's amazing how many kids just it's way more important than getting your prom tickets on time. Do the scholarships, it's huge. There's so many local organizations that give out scholarships, and it's huge, and it can really make a difference. So I highly encourage you to encourage your kids to do these. And then next. And again, the community college transfer can really cut down on the cost of a 4-year college in the long term. And so if any of you are considering that as an option, I highly encourage you to do that. Next slide. So there's lots to do senior year, and just stay on track. There is a handout in your folder to help guide you through what to do senior year. And I know guidance keeps you on track as well. And so just keep plugging away. It's a hard year, but it's a fun year as well.
The other thing to remind folks of is there's still room for the November SATs. I'd say, we would say any test opportunity that you have, like even up through December, great chance to, again, take a test, see how you do, and if those scores are better, to send those along. And again, no stress if for some reason you don't get the score that's needed in the college is looking for.
They get to see the space on that morning, so. Next slide?
Yep.
All right, sorry.
Oh, no problem. So what you can do now, if you haven't already done so, you can register for an FSA ID and password yourselves, if you so choose, or if you would prefer, we can help you navigate that as well as your FAFSA application and or CSS profile. We help you complete all of the financial aid applications. We do it one-on-one. We can do them through Zoom as well. We don't typically do the CSS profile through Zoom unless transportation is a real issue for you, just because it's a lot more complicated and there's a lot of intricate questions and looking at tax returns really closely, and sometimes it can get misread from the individual, and that way we can actually look at it instead of trying to see things through Zoom. But that's my email. Our phone number is 508-996-3147, and my secretary does schedule individual appointments. Again, we have evening and Saturday appointments available. Our flyers are in your folder, and we're here to help throughout this year and into the future. We service many students throughout their 4 years of college, and we're here to help guide and make this process as seamless and painless as possible.
We can post your contact, they have a Google
Yeah.
Classroom, we can post the contact information, so if they want to follow up with you, if they have questions too.
And NEPA's information is available at nepa.org. You can see other presentations. They have timelines available. They have a blog and other useful handouts and other seminars and all kinds of really useful information as well to help you through this process. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Well, I will stick around for anybody who might have an individual question or concern that they have. And again, I thank you all for coming. I hope tonight's presentation was informative. If you still had intake form to complete, please, if you could leave it on that back table or up here on the stage, I'd really appreciate it. And again, I thank you all for coming and enjoy the rest of your evening.
And let's give this, a big round of applause. Thank you for being a wonderful audience with great questions. Door Shane, come on down and get
We also give Ms. Mitchell